Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Series 8 of the Climate Pioneers Show. You will know by now that every series we focus on a different topic. And what better way to kick off our first series of 2025 than by interviewing experts from some of the UK's leading climate investors. I've been asking them for their reflections on 2024, what their predictions are for the market in 2025 and the technologies they are most excited about investing in. But I will also be asking them about what advice they would give to founders who are looking to raise investment this year. And today, for episode number 8, I am joined by Eric Kohlmann, partner at Climate First. Established in 2023, Climate First is a VC firm supporting exceptional climate tech companies that are driving decarbonisation on a global scale. They are also an official nominator of the Earthshot Prize. With a portfolio that already boasts 2 IPOs and 4 exits, they've backed technologies ranging from decarbonising the steel industry, sustainable mining, agri-biotech and food tech. Their portfolio makes for some fascinating reading. Eric, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Sherry, for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
My pleasure, my pleasure. So talk me through 2024 as a year, both on a kind of macro scale for climate investment as you saw it, but also for Climate First as a VC firm. What did 2024 bring for you?
So it's been an incredibly busy year last year, both for obviously the world in good and bad ways, but also, for us as a firm and actually me personally. I don't know if I told you this, but after spending 10 years in the US as an investor in the tech ecosystem, I actually moved to London last year to join Climate First and moved with my family and 2 young kids. So it's definitely been a momentous year, also on a personal level. I think for the ecosystem as a whole, we're still kind of in this transition period where we're going from talking about climate tech, as you do in the Climate Pioneers podcast, as something that was sort of climate tech 1.0 in the early days to something that's now happening all around us and just completely inevitable and literally shaking up every industry around us. We at Climate First, we see this firsthand by talking to many of our partners around the world. We have as part of our platform of our investment firm, we have a program that we call the roadshow program, where we invite leading climate tech founders from across Europe to join. And we literally take them with us on a roadshow to meet strategic corporates and industry partners. And, we went to places like Japan with 6 founders. We took founders to Abu Dhabi for Sustainability Week. And so we discovered that last year, a lot of people were sort of grappling with the changing political moves inside large industrial groups and corporates and sort of planning ahead. And while a lot of ESG goals have been put into question by just the sort of current political movements, what was very clear was that the underlying technology shift is not changing. Electrification is not stopping. The industry transformation of advanced manufacturing, of just more efficient processes is not stopping. If anything, it's accelerating. So that's just been incredibly exciting to see. And obviously our firm is betting on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just doing so perhaps under this technology is moving forward, just doing so under a slightly different terminology, perhaps, or through a different lens, maybe, is what I'm saying. Yeah. And just how have you found that transition from the US over here? And what are the kind of differences that you've seen both in the investment markets and in climate tech more broadly?
So the US is still, obviously a huge and very important ecosystem in venture capital in general, and in a more nuanced way in electrification, industry transformation, or climate tech. I would say that in Europe, by contrast, it's relatively, as you know, more fragmented and smaller, except for this one bright spot where really Europe shines and is quite differentiated from the US, which is in the energy transition. Okay. It's something that politically has a lot more consensus, which is just helpful to build to have long-term plans, both for large industry and corporates, but also for founders, right? And to know that sort of policy is generally going to be the same in a couple of years as it is now, with a lot more non-dilutive funding as well. So that is something that's, quite incredible to see. And I think that Europe coming back here from the US should really, where Europe should play to its strengths from a policy perspective, but also just as an economy. I think there was a report that came out that here in the UK, the green economy is now a multi-billion-dollar industry that's just a vital part of the UK economy, and actually one of the fastest growing ones. So it is by no means the sort of niche ESG-driven hobby, but actually a massive industry where Europe can naturally be a leader, even significantly ahead of the US.
Yeah, fascinating. And out of the companies in the Climate First portfolio, and I alluded there to some of the breadth within that portfolio, talk to me a little bit more about, as a fund, what you invest in, what stage, ticket size, what you invest in, and to give us a bit more of a flavour of who's in that portfolio.
Yeah, of course, I'd love that. So first of all, we are an early stage focus firm. As of now, we focus on seed and Series A companies. The four partners have an extensive track record doing this over the past 10 years. I've been a deep tech investor practically since my physics undergraduate days, and the same is true for the other partners. So we're deeply embedded in that ecosystem, but also had an investor journey of investing in sort of slightly different fields, but ultimately converging from what we've learned to this really exciting thesis, which is really investing across three pillars. The first one is the electrification piece, which is the economy is electrifying, and with that we need advanced, we need to upgrade our grids. We need grid level storage, we need batteries, so everything around the electrification thesis. The second one is the industry transformation. So what we're seeing, and it's driven in some ways by climate change, which is the big forcing function that as an investor we know is inevitable, and that's kind of the change along which we invest. The industry transformation we're undergoing is driven by more efficient, lower carbon, less polluting, and frankly, just better technologies, right? And that can be in robotics, that can be in even sort of bio manufacturing, materials, chemistry. So anything, if you think of large scale industrial processes, I'll get to one of them, such as think of steel making, right? 8% of total carbon emissions in the world. 500 billion industry is just massive in scale. If you can make a dent there, if you can make it more efficient, it'll be an incredible business with an enormous TAM, but it'll also have substantial impact. So that's the second piece, is the industry transformation. And then the third piece is optimization through AI and software. So how much can we take not just fundamental hardware and technology changes, but optimization through AI and software to improve on what we're currently doing.
Amazing. Okay, perfect. And what companies performed particularly well from your portfolio last year? And are there any threads or reasons as to why you think those companies in particular had a strong year?
Yeah, so one I just alluded to steel making, right? So we're investors in a company called Helios and have been early supporters in that company, and they focus on green steel making. And in fact, you will see my partner Nadav, he often carries around a piece of green iron that was made from iron ore in a completely carbon net zero process. And that process is incredibly powerful. They have perfected it to scale, which is currently the phase that they're in, the scaling up. And they've announced quite a big partnership with one of the big steel makers last year. So I think that company is really, really exciting. Steelmaking obviously is one of the fundamental processes out there to build everything around us. And if we can be a part of improving on that process and making it more sustainable and efficient, that's fantastic. So that's been a really exciting company. The other one is around the electrification batteries thesis. There's a company called Adionics, which we're very passionate about, and they developed a 3D metal material. So it's an industrial process, but to produce a 3D structure metal as a current collector on the anode near cathode to improve the efficiency of battery cells.
Oh, cool. Very cool. And what was it you think about those particular companies that you think prompted them to have a good year? Was it the regulatory environment that they're working within being in their favor? Was it the team? Was it the commercial traction? What do you think has kind of driven them to have a good year?
Yeah, so when maybe we're a little bit different as a firm compared to others. We try not to be too driven by regulation, right? So we typically shy away from things that are too reliant on the whims of regulators and policymakers, because it's something that we can't control as investors, right?
Yeah.
We know that, again, to the core thesis around climate change, obviously sort of a terrible thing in one way, but what's great about it as an investor is that it's a known truth. Very often, and I used to run a quant hedge fund for some time, so I know about sort of public markets sentiments and trading as well. It's often difficult as an investor to sort of know what to believe in and to have a thesis to invest along, because things change all the time, right? And then what happens here to your investment thesis? And especially in private markets, you're locked into investments for 5 to 10 years, right? So you have to try and predict the future as well as you can. Climate change is not going away. We hope it will, but it will be very, very slow. And so the planet is heating up dramatically, and that will have pretty dramatic consequences. And the data is overwhelmingly supportive of that. So at the very least, we as investors think, well, that's a great investment thesis. If we know that to be true, the world will have to change quite dramatically. But we try not to invest along, okay, here are short-term, sort of policy changes, right, that might affect a business or make a business viable or not viable. We try to invest along long-term technology trends that we are validating with our industry partners to say, okay, here's a large industrial conglomerate somewhere around the world that it has an X% market share, and learning from their own internal R&D process, we know here are technologies that they desperately need, right, to meet their goals, to become more efficient, to build a sustainable business. And those are the vectors that we invest along.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And what are you excited about investing in this year? I know you mentioned those 3 pillars. And also you talked about how energy, is a market that you believe that Europe can really, really capitalize on. What other technologies, what other opportunities for growth do you see there being in the market this year?
Yeah, so just to give you a glimpse, obviously there's a lot of noise again around the political arena, especially in the US. Some of it also now here coming to the UK. Again, the good news is if you look at the data and you look at what's actually happening, it's continuing. Like investment in the electrification transition of the economy is well underway and is not going to be stopped by any sort of current political leader or movement, because it's fundamentally technology and efficiency driven. The times of a lot of these changes being driven purely by government incentives or subsidies is over. And in the US, the largest installer of solar panels around is Texas, which is a deep Republican state, and it's quite wonderful if you land in in Austin or one of the cities in Texas, and you will probably fly over massive solar farm fields and have an extraordinarily high share of EVs on the road. And it's not because they want to meet some ESG goal. It's just good business, and they're just good cars, right? So it's very simple. So what I'm trying to say is that this technological shift is well underway, and that opens opportunities. It opens opportunities to bring industry partners on board, right? And that's partly what we drive through our platform, to benefit founders, to benefit our investments. And we have a couple of areas here that we're especially excited about. So, I mentioned, along electrification, there are some significant improvements in battery technology, right? But with that, also the industry is maturing. So increasingly, we have older batteries around that need to be recycled, right? So battery recycling is a huge topic that we're looking at, and we're sort of getting to maturity here a little bit, and seeing sort of how that industry is likely to play out, and who are going to be the big participants, and what is the structure, of these plants going to look like. So that's something that we're following quite closely. But I'm also, maybe because of the physics background, I'm also very interested in materials, right? What advanced materials can we use for industrial products, right? We're always focused on industry, really B2B. We don't really touch anything consumery. So there are a couple interesting technologies there as well, including into biomanufacturing, which is a field that I'm quite interested in. A lot of like low carbon manufacturing ways can actually involve biology in some meaningful way. And so that's a theme that I've been tracking quite closely.
Interesting. And what's particularly important to you when you are looking at a potential prospect to invest in? What makes an investable company for you? So other than the technology being exciting, you mentioned there that, you know, regulatory isn't something and policy isn't something you really look at, but what else within the team, the idea, what else is important to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a relatively simple formula,
Mm.
that we've been honing in on. And it's sort of the collective experience of the partners that produce this from seeing successes and failures in the past, right? And one is that obviously we bet on very heavy, sort of involved technology that we like to be differentiated. So that's number one, right? So we like to see technology that has a meaningful advantage, be it through IP protection or in other ways, over others that can make this stand out, right? Because otherwise there are certain areas where you have, sort of 5,000 companies more or less doing a variation of the other, and then why would you invest in one of them? It's a bit like throwing a dart at the board, and like, well, you might index it, you might say, okay, I'm going to invest in all of them, and that'll be a successful index, but otherwise why select one out of a million? So you try to do something that stands out and is quite differentiated, which will then also help you in bringing in partners, right? Because one of the things that I think people forget about is that if you invest in something as a VC, as an investor, the next thing is that you will have to pitch the company to the next investors and industry partners. And so you want something that really stands out, where you can give people a call, where you can call up, sort of any major decision maker you want and say, here's something that's really different that you haven't seen before. And so that's number one. The second, obviously, is to have a technology that can mature relatively quickly, because otherwise the other person will probably say, well, okay, call me back in 10 years when it's developed. So you want something that is relatively close to market, though we're happy to kind of be that bridge. We're happy to invest in something that is not quite ready to go off the production line, but at least we have a view of how to get there within just a few years, within a relatively short time frame. So the technology readiness level of sort of 5, 6 plus is quite important.
Yeah. And how do you help? Because with hardware and deep tech solutions, that commercialization piece can be really challenging and kind of bridging that gap. How do you support founders on bridging that gap? You mentioned a little bit there that you can. Is that through things like the roadshows, where you take them out and introduce them to big industry, or what methods do you have for supporting them on that journey?
100%. I mean, this is something, again, that we've learned over the decades of experience, that that is the missing piece very often. It's that disconnect. Is that you have a great scientist at a university laboratory that's discovered new chemistry for making something, but then there's this disconnect to, well, how is large industry looking at this, and is this actually scalable and manufacturable, and what would be the needs to get there, and how was financing, how would that work, and which is the traditional job of VC, right? So that's not new. What's different here in this field is that industry and the large scale industrial processes, they're so ingrained, and there are not that many players that have perfected them, that you better have an in over there, that you better know what is driving the decision making, who are the buyers, what is their own internal R&D process. And that's precisely why we have very strategically developed, for example, the roadshow program as part of our platform, to just meet with these people, to just take a group of founders and say, okay, let's fly out to, as we did last year, since you asked about last year, let's fly out to Japan together, and let's meet 50 of the large industry leaders in your field. And that's exactly the missing link, the missing information piece and piece on the partnership side that can produce successes in this field.
And what's the appetite like from industry for those roadshows? I assume pretty good, right? Because how are they responding to it? And this feels to me quite a unique concept. Are there many other funds that are doing something similar?
It's a very unique concept. We think that we've built something that's quite differentiated here, and it has given us a brand and excellent reputation, I think, in the industry. And also corporates, they don't like to waste their time. They're serious players, and they see that we're very serious about this, and we bring very serious founders through their door. So I think it's a win-win. Certainly a win for the founders. They're not, paying anything to participate. For us, it's a part of the diligence process that we go through to see founders perform, frankly, in in these conversations and to learn a lot from that. So we think it's very unique and it's a win-win. It's not easy, right? Building a Rolodex of the 500 plus corporates in our network all over the world. It takes a lot of investment and effort and time, frankly, to build those relationships. But it's something that we're very proud of.
Yeah, fantastic. I love it. And what advice would you have for founders that are looking to raise investment this year, that fit into those areas that align with your thesis and would be thinking about approaching climate first? What ducks would you suggest they get in a row, as it were, before they reach out to you? What stage do you expect them to be at? Yeah, how could they prepare best to approach you?
So I described the stage a little bit, right? It has to be a differentiated technology angle with a view to commercialization and partnerships. So you want to have a sense of, these are the partnership agreements that we can get in a relatively short time frame, right? So that's the stage that we're interested in. In terms of, what's important, I think the market has changed a little bit. We've always been very much financial return driven because we think that's how you build great businesses. At the end of the day, you have to have financial success to have a systemic effect, certainly in the for-profit industry, which we're in. And so having a view of, okay, here's how I'm going to build a profitable business along your thesis, right? Along the thesis of the planet's getting hotter, climate change is real. These are the changes that we'll need to implement, right, over time. But not necessarily saying, okay, here's how I'm going to meet ESG metrics as a business matter, right? Those goals are important, but we're very much financial return investors. And I think in Europe, there's maybe been an underemphasis on, okay, I'm founding this company and I want this to be a great investment for you as a VC, right?
Yeah. So you need them to come to you with a strong financial plan for how they're going to generate returns. Yeah.
Correct.
Yep. Okay. And I know you said you invest at seed and Series A. How do you expect companies to already be at that point when they come and approach you? Or are you quite happy to start conversations with companies that are a little bit more nascent than that, and start building that relationship over time?
We're always happy to start conversations early, and we think out of the box. We're not overly regimented in sort of how we cookie cut things. I've done plenty of incubations, and the team, my partners have done plenty of incubations in the past, including quite successful ones. So we're very happy to talk early, to begin the conversation with founders as soon as they think they have something important to share, and build a journey together.
Amazing. I love that. And how can people get in touch with you if they're listening and they feel that Climate First could be a good fit for them as a fund? How can they get in touch with you and the team?
You can very easily reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I think my email is no secret. It's eric@climatefirst.vc.
Amazing. That's great. Thank you so much, Eric. And thank you so much for jumping in at last minute, because I know we had scheduled that we were supposed to be speaking with Nadav, and he's not very well today. So huge thanks to you for stepping in literally at the very last minute to take over and share your insights and your knowledge. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
It was wonderful to be here. Thank you so much.